Pediatric Lounge, a podcast taking you behind the door of the physician's lounge to get a deeper insight into just what docs are talking about today. From the clinically profound to the wonderfully routine and everything in between. Hey, George, good morning. It's Tuesday morning, and we have another podcast to do on
Yeah.
our fourth season.
Yeah, today we have Dr. Mike Neal. The title of discussion is going to be Identifying Diamonds in the Rough. People who may not shine on a resume but are perfect cultural and skills fit for the practice. Today's guest turned a hiring headache into a game-changing solution for private practices. Back in 2002, Dr. Mike Neal and his wife, Dr. Amy Neal, founded Lakeside Vision. And like many practice owners, they struggled with the hiring of the right people for their office. Staff turnover was constant and growth stalled, just like in pediatric practices of today. Instead of repeating the same mistakes, Dr. Neal took a different approach. He stopped the hiring based on experience alone and started focusing on the traits and the mindsets, learning speed, and strengths of the applicant. The results were a dramatic, stronger teams, better retention, and a thriving practice. And that led to the creation of Build My Team. Welcome, Dr. Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, gents.
Yes. Today, we'd like to talk to you. We usually ask, why did you become a pediatrician? But why don't you tell us about yourself? You're in private practice.
Yeah, you betcha. I'm not a pediatrician, so that's a tough question to answer. But as far as healthcare goes, I'm an optometrist. So what's an eye doctor have to know about what a pediatrician goes through? And the answer is my software company does hiring for all kinds of different healthcare practices, and we do it without using resumes, by focusing on candidate strengths. Right. So what we've found is that an eye care practice is the same as a pediatric practice, same as dental, et cetera, all throughout the healthcare professions, as long as we're in private practice.
Correct. So tell us a little bit about what is diamond in the rough? What does that mean when hiring for your team?
What a lot of folks focus on is hiring for experience, somebody who's done the job before, and our approach is completely different, and therefore it gets completely different results. We're not looking for people with experience. Now, the caveat there is we don't hire licensed professionals. We're looking for the clinical team members, administrative team members, practice managers, billers, that type of thing. But we're not looking for folks with experience. And the reason being is that our approach is able to find these diamonds in the rough, folks who don't know how talented they are. They don't know that they're A players, these superstar team members. And by focusing on their strengths, they get to show up for work every day, be themselves, have incredibly high productivity, and are really terrific in the position.
Yeah. When we're hiring in our pediatric offices, we're hiring physicians. Most of them are 18 people.
No.
No.
When I look at what you do in your company and the turnover that you do, I can offer some very harsh constructive criticism. And I think this is true of almost all medical practices, which is the first thing you need to do is you have to have a system in place. Whether you're hiring doctors or you're hiring billers or you're hiring the people that are going to make sure your rooms are clean at the end of the day. It has to be a systematic process, and very few people have a systematic process. Number two, before you even bother to talk to someone, you need to hand them your vision, your mission, and your value statements and say, are you okay with this? If you're not okay with it, move on, because this is what we believe in. And if you're going to be part of our team, you must agree to these before we even interview you. And then my part of the system, which it's just because I don't have a lot of money, is I use something called the Big Five, which is a emotional inventory that is looking for people who are conscientious, because I want people to show up on time, people who are agreeable, because I don't want to have an argument with someone about what vaccine to give when they don't have a license and they're not a pediatrician. Or if I was an optometrist, I don't want to be arguing with a tech on how to do the refractions. It's just done this way because we do it this way, and that gives us the best result for the patient. And then it is also openness, the ability for people to think do and innovate. So you're hiring badasses. But most practices that I've consulted for don't even have your vision, mission, values written down, let alone a plan to how to hire or ever do any kind of psychological inventory to see what kind of person this is beyond their technical skills. So I think, and physicians are like any bell curve. There's geniuses, there's the 50 percentile, and then there's some people that have terrible habits. And they may be geniuses at memorizing things, passing tests, making a diagnosis, but they have horrible habits. They don't show up on time, they're disconfabulated, they don't look professional. When you ask them to do something, it's an argument about blah, 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 blah. And optometry, like pediatrics, is a volume-based practice. If you waste time arguing, you're losing money. So that's my criticism of what most people do when they're hiring.
Yeah, but that's an age-old problem from residency, showing up late to the lectures. It's okay to go late. You go to meetings, it's okay to go late. I don't know where it starts, but if you come to work,
then you don't hire those people. Then you don't have a problem.
Yeah, I guess
that's that simple. I think one of the best books for management is Coach Wooden. Was it Wooden that won 10 basketball titles out in California? He had very simple rules. And one was you're in the bus 20 minutes before we leave. And I don't care if you're Kareem Jabbar and you show up 15 minutes before the bus leaves. The door's locked. You're not playing today. You wear the same shoes. You tie the shoelace the same way in the socks because I don't want you to have a blister that prevents you from running. I don't want you to trip because you didn't tie your shoes right. Now, that the other team has 5 people that are all stars and we don't, I can't control. That their ref is half blind and doesn't like my team, I can't control that. But I can control that you don't trip. I can control that we get there on time. I can control that you don't have a blister. I can control that you won't run out of breath while you're doing a layup because we're well conditioned.
Yeah.
And it's about leadership and setting expectations. So I don't think they get a pass.
Yeah, but you know what? For physicians especially, I think all those qualities that you described, I think they're expected of a physician.
No, they're not.
They're not? What do you think, Dr. Mike?
I think that a lot of physicians are situated a bit of a performance and behavior silo in terms of they are able to do what they want within certain parameters. But the way we see private practices is that a lot of the docs have, in particular, like fiefdoms. And it's their way or the highway within their practice. It is their practice. That is entirely acceptable. It falls apart a little bit when you get into a group practice setting, that type of thing. But when we're hiring these administrative team members for the practices and the physicians, one of the things we do on the entry-level interview for our clients is we like to find out what type of practice they're in. Is it high volume? Is it concierge? Is the clinician, even all the way down to the level of communication speed that the clinician has? I talk a little bit faster than Herb does. If we're hiring people for that practice, can they handle my verbal cadence, or do they prefer somebody who speaks a little slower? All those types of things. We match the candidates to the physician. And the reason we have to do it that way is that each physician practices in more or less a unique way in terms of their behavior, how they interact with their team, etc. And if we're not customizing the type of candidate for that practice, it generally isn't successful. So that's one of our kind of secret sauce points as to how we keep the candidates in the practice for as long as they are.
Yeah. When you're looking at a resume, what are some of these qualities that matter other than fancy schools? What are you looking for? Because that's what you see resume. Recently, I've been seeing resumes that have, I went to this place, I did residency over here, and then pages upon pages of research and write-ups and academic things.
But okay, so this is where you're going to hate me, George.
No.
Yeah, we don't look at resumes because of what you just said. Okay, we have software that goes through all of the candidates and determines if they're a good match for the position automatically. Resumes aren't part of the equation. Now, why do we do it that way? Because it's a completely backwards way versus what you're describing. It's upside down. We do it that way because of what you just said. The resume lists their schools, their research papers. It's the most valuable thing about a resume for a non-doctor is their contact information. It's crazy to say something like that, but I'll flip this around on you. With ChatGPT and AI, resumes can be, you can now, with your phone, have a verbal conversation with ChatGPT where you describe the information you want it to have in the resume, and then ChatGPT will whip you up a resume that looks like you should be running Coca-Cola or General Motors. It is incredible. And on our side as docs, this isn't something we do. I don't know a doctor who's created a resume in the last who knows how long. It's just generally something we don't do by going through ChatGPT. That's what I meant. But folks on the administrative and the clerical team side, they do this all the time. And what it leads to is a resume that is based so loosely on the truth that I couldn't possibly describe it as being true or having accuracy other than the contact information at this point. Now, on the physician side, of course, they're not going to lie about the schools they went to, the research papers. Those are so easily verifiable and should be verified. But here's the biggest but. What does that resume tell you about the person you're hiring? What does it tell you about what they're good at? What does it tell you about their communication style, how they interact with patients? Are they hilarious? Are they Mr. Bean dry? Are they nice, kind? You don't know any of that stuff. You don't, as far as I'm showing up for work and being punctual on time, you don't know what their stress tolerance is. You don't know if they're detail oriented or process oriented. You may be bringing in a physician who reinvents the wheel every third patient. You can't do that successfully in a practice without causing absolute chaos. So that is the foundational, long-winded reason why we don't have anything to do with hiring based upon resumes. And I don't know how to handle a situation where you're making decisions based upon resumes for hiring nowadays, because there's that old adage, you lean your ladder up against the wall and you climb it as fast as you can, only to realize when you get to the top of the ladder, you're leaning against the wrong wall.
Yeah. But it's without a resume, how do you spot potential in somebody? You have to, gonna hire Dr. Herb. I need some information about him, something to start a discussion. You've been doing this for a long time, Herb. What did you do in the last, because you've changed a lot of jobs. He does a lot of locum, so it looks like he's changed a lot of jobs, but it's the same jobs many times.
Of
and
course.
That's what we've seen a lot of. I've seen a lot of resumes that had 10 jobs in 10 years. Those are
okay, so back up for a second, George, because I think there's some genius here in what you just said that we can build upon, right?
Yeah.
So you look at it, someone like Herb. So I'm not exactly 30 years old anymore. And then the fact that Herb can go to different offices, what does that tell you about Herb's personality? And that's for our guest to answer. It's not so much important the resume, but what does that tell you about somebody that can fit into different work environments?
Yeah, you're a chameleon. You're flexible. You can go from X type of environment to Y type of environment and move very successfully, or else you wouldn't be there for a year. You'd be long gone far sooner than that.
And so is that a plus in certain organizations, or is that a minus always?
It completely depends on the fit that you're trying to make with an organization.
Because we hear this all the time, so that's why I'm asking you the question. They say like hiring doctors over 50 is difficult because they're already set on their ways and you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Oh, okay, time out on that one. I will absolutely back the truck up on that point. Okay, so with our hiring process, remember, it's automated. We don't know how old a person is. We don't know if they're male or female. We don't know their race, color. They could be green and pink with purple highlights all over them. They could look like a zebra. It doesn't matter. What we found and proven in over 40 states plus Canada is it categorically doesn't matter. What you're looking for is a person who has an incredibly tight fit to the position. Age is irrelevant. and I cannot state this strongly enough, we generally fight age discrimination on the low end of the scale. You can put an extremely well matched person who's 18 or 19 at the front desk of a medical practice and have them blow the doors off of somebody who's 50. And you can have somebody who's 50 with extremely tight match with their strengths and talents blow the doors off of somebody who's 18. I've seen it both ways hundreds of times. It doesn't matter. There are pros and cons to all of this.
So let's explore a little bit what you're saying, because this is what I was getting to, that the first step is to give the applicant your vision, mission, and value statements. So you're looking for tight fits. So
Yes.
if you're a practice that works in shifts, Saturdays, Sundays, sometimes you come in at noon, sometimes you come in at 8, someone that's able to adapt to different environments may be a tight fit to that, versus someone that wants to work 9 to 3, 4 days a week, have limited call, and that's why they chose to be an optometrist or a pediatrician, because if they wanted to be a trauma surgeon, they would have been a trauma surgeon and have crazy schedules. And if you're trying to get the person that wanted the optometry job or even the ophthalmology job, because they don't work very hard, that's why they go into it, or the pediatrician, they don't want the crazy schedules. And so if you have a 7-day-a-week practice with crazy schedules and you're trying to make people fit into that, you can't offer them money, you can't persuade them, you can't talk to them. They fit in a 9 to 3, Monday through Thursday schedule, 3-day weekends, and 4-week vacations.
Right.
That's where they fit.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying. It's somebody like Herb that can adapt to different environments may become really bored very fast if we're doing 9 to 3, Monday through Thursday, and there's nothing else to do.
I'll give you an example. With the Build My Team automated hiring process, one of our questions is, here are the hours that the practice is open, and it lists the hours in crystal clear black and white. Then we ask them a question: are you able to work these hours? And it's a yes or no. This isn't a maybe. This isn't, let me check with my babysitter to see if the goldfish is sick today or not, whether or not the babysitter can come in, and whether or not I can show up in your practice. When we're looking for high performers, it's a yes or no question. And if they cannot work that schedule, if your practice needs somebody full time from 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and they want to work from 10 to 2, Tuesdays and Thursdays with a 2-hour lunch, this is going nowhere. It does not matter. It's a full stop at that point. It does not matter. We call those knockout questions. Another one, for example, is how far are you located from the practice? So in a rural area, being 20 miles away, no big deal. If you're 20 miles away in Manhattan, I don't know that you can be 20 miles away, but you can be driving by 100 other places to work, and it'll never last, things like that. So we ask those types of questions to ensure that right off the bat, this is a position that could possibly work. And if you hit issues on those, what we call knockout questions, they gently get knocked out of our process and we move to the next candidate, because it will not work no matter what you do.
And I have a question for you. Why do you so far have only done this on what I call the supporting staff, most of the clinician?
We can run clinicians through it. Absolutely. This is human-based. It doesn't matter.
Psychology. We're all the same.
Yeah, exactly. The reason that we remove almost everybody from the hiring process. So we're looking for the absolute cream of the crop. A way to think about it is we're looking for the right needle in a stack of needles. Okay. We have to remove all of the people we know who cannot do the job, and then we're left with the ones that can, and then we tighten up that fit really so that it's an extremely tight fit between what the practice requires in terms of the type of candidate and what the candidate offers. That's what makes Build My Team special in terms of getting these people into the positions. It does not matter if they're running the front desk or if they're a pediatrician, an optometrist, or otherwise.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're weeding them out with psychological questions and
yes,
whatever their life preferences are. But my life preference is I don't want to work much. I want all my weekends off. That's work-life balance. And I don't want a lot of responsibility. But that doesn't come with the doctor job.
Yes, it does.
Where? What planet?
You could go work for PM Pediatrics, do
Oh,
per
they
diem
work.
shifts,
Yeah,
and they tell you you work Tuesday from 10 to 8 or whatever.
they don't have
Um,
those hours. They're noon to midnight, 12-hour shifts. You gotta,
and
it's
not
really
in
heavy duty
DC,
work.
but
It's
they
a
have different
shift.
hours in different places. There are different practices with different styles. And we've interviewed over 200 people that own practices.
Huh?
Some practices are not open on Saturdays.
Yeah,
Some practices don't ever have evening hours. Some
right.
practices are open on Saturday and Sundays. Some practices have walk-in hours starting at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Some practices open at 6 in the morning and go till 8 at night and
Huh?
are open on Saturdays and do well child exams and sick visits. So it's just a matter of what kind of practice as a practice owner do I want?
Mhm.
Culture do I want as a practice owner? And then find the people with a system like this Build My Team system
Huh?
that will automatically already be a fit in. But if I'm trying to force someone that only wants to work 2 days a week into a practice like yours that's open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. till 8 p.m., that bird is not going to fly.
Can I give you an example here? In our practice, what we found over the years is that like everybody thinks the positions are based upon how much money you pay. I hear that constantly from new practices that don't have a lot of experience hiring or are hiring unsuccessfully. In our practice, Build My Team does all of the hiring for the practice. And what that translates to is we see patients Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesdays are off almost every Wednesday. Some exceptions with long weekends and such, but almost every Wednesday's off. That is a tremendous, absolutely colossal hiring advantage that we have because all of the team members get to run their errands on Wednesday, their doctor's appointments. They take the kids to whatever on Wednesdays, and that is a fully booked day for the parent. When we're doing the hiring side of things, you'd think that folks want to be paid absolutely top dollar. What so many of our team members prefer is having that additional day off. They make almost 40 hours. I think it's about 35, but they vastly prefer the Wednesdays off. And this gives them the work-life balance that everybody nowadays seems to want. And on the other hand, the practice, it's a whole lot easier to see patients 2 days, have a day off than another 2 days, as both of you guys know. And that has been one of our top advantages for hiring over, I'd say, every single other potential factor.
During the week, a day off. I'm off on Tuesdays. I've been doing that forever. I think it's great to be off on Tuesdays. I could do my podcast on Tuesday. I
Yeah.
know at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, I can talk to Herb without a problem. If we need to adjust it because you're from California, we have to move the time, that's okay. Contractors don't come to your house on Saturday or Sunday. They come on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But in the medical world, especially in the pediatrics, you have to be open on Saturday. You have to be open on Sunday because children get sick.
Of course.
I remember her when my wife was doing private practice way back in the day. She was on call for a small practice. They were closed on Saturday and Sunday. So when she was on call on Friday night, it was a disaster on Saturday because they wouldn't go in. People remember back in 96, 97, the phones used to ring all the time. She'd have to persuade these people that ear infection, that pain that you have is not that big of a deal and come on Monday. How do you keep a kid in pain for 2 days? Yet we used to do that stuff. We used to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But now there's no way you can do that stuff. So people want immediate access. We had a physician that was a perfect fit, was friendly with everybody, worked with us for years, but she had to leave out of state because the husband had some fellowship out of state. But when I come back to Long Island with my family, we're going to come back to you. They ended up going to an academic center. Why? 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, off on Saturday and Sunday. She has children. I asked her, where do you go with why don't you go to your practice with your children? She comes to our practice with our children because we're open on Saturday and her office is not. Amazing, right? And it's the generation that wants the service.
I think you didn't hear me when I said your value is access. That is the RBK value, access to care.
And that's what made it successful.
that made you successful. There's other people that are more successful than you that aren't open on Saturdays and Sundays. That's your secret sauce. Access is a value that your practice has.
Right.
When you're hiring, money or bullying or loan repayment or this or that doesn't trump what that person feels like is important. For Dr. Neal, what is important is a balance, and he can make plenty of money seeing patients Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, and he hires the best staff and doesn't have headaches with turnover. That's what's important to him, to have a great team that doesn't turn over, and he's willing to lose whatever revenue one could make in optometry seeing patients for one more day. And in pediatrics, a lot of people feel like, okay, there's plenty of good PM pediatrics around the corner, which is an urgent care. They're open on Saturdays. There's 10 for pediatricians. They can see the colds that don't want to wait to be seen on Monday. And that's a-okay with me because I got a great team, a great lifestyle, my family's happy, and I make enough money. So what you're missing there, George, is your values are set. Access. 7 days a week. When you're hiring, your first question is to hand them your vision, your mission, and your values, because right there in your value statement says access. And we do this for the long run because we've been on Comic for 65 years. We come here to stay. Okay. If that's not what you value, then we're going to pass on the interview. Thank you so much. And then you go to the next person and the next person until you find the one person who says, I don't care if I work on Saturday or Sunday. Can I have Wednesday and Thursdays off? That the ski slopes are like empty and I love skiing.
Empty. Yeah.
I can go skiing on Wednesdays and Thursdays and see all the patients you want me to see on Saturdays and Sundays. Man, I can even go up to Vail on Tuesday night and come back Thursday night and get on the empty slopes. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that person that matches the values that you have. And that's very difficult in pediatrics because we're 85% women, and women's values are more about better time management and more time with family.
Yeah.
That's their value, and that's a great value because that's how we raise children, and children are important to foster a democracy. But that's what Dr. Neal's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
The first thing is, what is it? What is your practices, values, and culture? The second thing is, find the people that have those values already and will fit into that culture, and have a systemic system to ferret out the ones that don't, so you're not wasting your time recruiting. Am I right, Dr. Neal?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the umbrella concept behind this. And then we also drill down into the supremely small details, like how they handle stress, whether or not they can follow process, are they detail oriented, their communication styles, how they prefer to work with other team members, do they like to be solo versus more of a team approach, et cetera, et cetera. We have oodles of information on these candidates. And then we even go so far as to do a video interview of them, a one-way video interview. And that's to determine how they answer the questions that they're being asked and make sure that essentially the person that we see in front of us matches the responses that they're giving on our assessments. And so this entirely comprehensive approach, as Herb said, it is completely systematized. We get a thumbs up for the candidates from our software, for the candidates that can match in this position without a human ever having any interaction with them. That type of methodical approach removes the bias, the ability to be manipulated. That's something we could talk about. It's wild for the physician to be manipulated by the candidates, be told what the physician wants to hear in order to get the position, etc. Completely removed.
So I want to dig a little deeper because some of the stuff you said could be good or could be bad. I am very OCD. I like to run a tight ship because I feel that I'm being given the opportunity to care for someone else's child.
Of course.
And I don't really want to mess it up. And like Coach Wooden, I really can't help it if your kid has cancer. I didn't wish that to him for it to happen. But there's a lot of things that I can get right. What vaccine you're going to get, that you were asked if you want to get the vaccine, that was given at the right time, that we put the lot number in the computer, that we put the expiration date, that the refrigerator was working at the right temperature so the vaccine works. All these things can be done right almost like 99% of the time,
Right.
if you are careful.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the mistakes that drive me up the walls, because those I can prevent.
Yes.
If we're in the middle of the flu season and 200 people are calling in because they want to be seen and we only have 30 appointments, I just can't help you there. You're going to have to go to the urgent care or the ER if you really think you have to be seen. You're going to have long waits because unfortunately influenza hits the community all at the same time. So it's incredibly huge amount of demand at the same time, and everybody gets overwhelmed for 2 weeks. But being too detail oriented or OCD makes it difficult for people to work with me because I don't tolerate small mistakes, because I think it's going to lead to big mistakes. And so it's harder to work in my team because one of my personal values is excellence.
Yeah. And you are not alone in the physician community when it comes to that. And so from the build my team approach, when our team members are talking with you up front about the types of folks that you're looking to hire and just the general concept of how you run your practice, that would come out in the first couple of sentences, what you just said. So what we're doing behind the scenes, and we wouldn't necessarily go through this per se, but we're looking for people who at a minimum are highly detail oriented, because Herb, if they're not, they're never, ever going to make it on your team. It's going to cycle through people. It is just like somebody who wants to work a day a week and you're asking them to work 7. It is the same stretch from that concept to the detail oriented side. If they don't roll out of bed and slightly adjust the items on their nightstand so that everything is lined up, this is not the type of person for you. It's very straightforward. So since we can measure that accurately, we can get those people onto your team, and we can also make sure that they're nice and friendly and they have all the rest of the characteristics as possible. But you only get somebody that specific when you pour hundreds of candidates into the top of this enormous funnel, as we're looking to weed them out to pull the proper candidates for your practice that have these types of characteristics. And I got to ask you, how are you going to do that in an interview?
No, it's been shown over and over again that the interview is a very biased experience. It's like speed dating. Everybody's lying a little bit. The person hiring is lying a little bit. The person looking for the job's lying a little bit. And unfortunately, dating, maybe neither side really knows what they want. And then it's a disaster because neither one knows themselves well enough to know what they want.
I think that's a shocking point in our practice that really blew me away, was that almost exactly 50% of the candidates that applied for position A were switched to position B. And what I mean by that is if we had 2 open positions, they thought they were a better match for position A. And what our testing revealed is that they most certainly aren't. They'd be a better match for position B. So you got a coin flip right off the bat. A candidate at their very best has a coin flip level of accuracy as to which position they're going to take within the practice. And that alone, in an interview situation, you set the bar at the best you could possibly do as a 50% accuracy. That's miserable. Who would take those odds in the rest of life?
Yeah. I love that you have a system and that ferrets all of that out, because it's very important. Then here's what I see a lot. And of course, it happens more in smaller practices than large practices, which is you hire by crisis.
Oh boy.
And it's always the same result, and you can't seem to get out of the hole. So here's an example, because this will make you get gastritis and just shake your head. So I was covering a practice for 2.5 weeks. The owner was in South America. I walk in on Monday morning and the office manager is just about to run out the door. There's no lights in the office. I'm like, what happened? Did they cut the power lights out? The power out? But they run with 3 medical assistants. One got a surgical emergency procedure on Saturday night. She's out for 2 weeks.
Oh boy.
The second one was going back to Idaho to bring her stuff back because her and her husband were moving into Virginia. Something happened. I don't know what happened. That is not going to happen right now. So she was supposed to be out for a week, but now no one knows how long she's going. The third person is a new hire, very little experience, who could not cancel his morning class out of the college to come cover the practice for Monday morning. So there's no medical assistance. There's nobody to bring the patients back.
Oh
So the
boy.
whole practice has to shut down for at least a morning. And then the medical assistant that they hired, so this is in the weeds, but this is not in the weeds. He writes down on the charts temperature for the kid 95 degrees. Now,
Sure about that?
Huh?
You
Yeah,
sure
well,
about that?
yeah, that what I say is when I see that on the chart, I go, there's no need for me anymore. Call the mortician, and I'm Catholic, and a priest to give him the blessing because we're done. 95, you're dead. So there's no need for a doctor at this point.
Yeah.
But that tells you, to me, this person is not careful, is not capable of thinking.
Yeah.
And in a medical organization is extremely dangerous.
Yes.
Because
They got to go.
I'm counting on those data points because I can't do it all myself and see 20 patients in a day.
Yeah.
And if those data points are not tight, I may come to the wrong decision.
Of course.
And they may harm someone. But see, the quandary there is, yeah, he's got to go, but there's no one else. Where do you come up with an MA in 12 hours?
You don't. So in that particular case, quick, relatively stern conversation explaining exactly how you just did to the person needs to be done on the spot. And if it improves, terrific. But my guess is that is the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, no, it got worse. See,
Yeah.
So we give vaccines. There's one vaccine that a friend of ours invented. What's his name, George?
Paul Offit?
Paul Offit. Paul Offit invented the diarrhea vaccine, the rotavirus. And it has to be given at 2, 4, and 6 months, with 2 months apart. You can't give it after 8 months because there is some concern that it causes a surgical emergency in the kids. And so no one tested it after 8 months. So we don't know if it's safe, if it has any efficacy, but the FDA label is do not use the vaccine after 8 months. And of course, there's a 12-month-old kid who skipped out on a vaccine series and he drew the diarrhea vaccine to give to the kid. And that's the kind of error that I'm telling you could kill the patient.
Yeah.
And so then it's the same thing. He's not detail oriented. He doesn't think. And when you bring it up to him, he's not agreeable. He can't be coached. He argues with you that he needs 3 and the computer says he's missing a 3rd dose of the rotavirus vaccine, so he needs to give it.
Sayonara, Herb.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you. But that's the other thing.
That's low-level medical assistant work. What happens if it's physician?
But wait, he hasn't answered the question. We're in crisis mode. We are down 2 MAs, and the 1 MA we have, we cannot fire because at least they can bring patients back and keep the clinician seeing patients until we've hired. How do you manage that? How do you come up with the candidate when it's basically it's a shotgun wedding?
Yeah, it's more than a shotgun wedding. I'll tell you what, that's a bazooka wedding, I think. But yeah, I mean,
the house is on fire.
The build my team approach, the fastest we've ever been able to fill a position. We had a retinal surgeon who Sunday night texted us that, and I quote, "I need a heartbeat." That was the text.
Yeah.
So it started first thing Monday morning. We had a person that went all the way through our process that was fantastic on Tuesday, in for an interview Wednesday morning. First day was Thursday. Is that a normal turnaround time? No, it's not, but it is possible. So in that particular case, I would counsel the practice to dramatically rein in the activities that particular medical assistant was allowed to do, and then start the process of hiring immediately. But Herb, the real answer to this is not what I just said. It's to get far upstream of this issue and to change the process to begin with, so you aren't bringing in people who sit in an interview and say, I'm completely detail oriented. As you look at them across the desk, they're disheveled. They arrived a little bit late. You find out that your team had to tell them 7.5 times that when the interview was, where it's at. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
the real issue.
So I think, and then so now you get them in. Culture is important of the organization, right? Culture makes team. I remember back in the day, Herb, I never told you this, but Dr. Reichman used to have this thing. We're talking 1960, 70. We don't believe in quality, we believe in quantity. So they used to have a lot of medical assistants floating around. You didn't have to have nurses giving shots. You could train a high school student to give shots back then, right? So they'd have lots and lots of people working around, but the physician did a lot of the work. He could do a lot of the medical work back then because they didn't really have to write much of the progress notes. But as the technology and the systems and certifications became more and more, you needed to have more and more qualified people. So what I've been noticing is if you change your culture to more of quality, the people want to learn and do quality work. And it starts with good nurses, making more nurses, good medical assistants, making better medical assistants. And then every now and then you'll have one nurse that's been around forever. That's the cancer of the organization. I've seen that also. Just naysayers, nothing's good, Dr. Herb is stupid, things like that. You got to get rid of those people right away. But they've been around forever, so they don't go. What are your thoughts on that?
With our approach, that's why we don't prioritize experience. Right. Now, the caveat, of course, is with licensed professionals. But George, you're spot on. That type of person is preventing your high performers from high performance. They are caustic to the organization, carcinogenic if they're bad enough. They have to go no matter what. And there's a quote, the performance of an organization is something along the lines of what's most limited by what the business owner is willing to tolerate. Mm-hmm. And so if you have these people that are really not great employees, you're telling the rest of the employees that it's okay to act like that. Right. You are terrible at your position. I accept that you're terrible at your position. I keep you employed. Therefore, you're standing on a soapbox with a megaphone telling the rest of the team that mediocrity is okay.
Yep, I agree.
It's one of the most dangerous things you can do in a business from a cultural standpoint.
And not only that, you may have a really good medical assistant, and Dr. Tom Ayer calls him BMW, bitch, moaning, and whiner. a C level player as the second medical assistant.
Yeah.
And the BMW will drag their feet, not bring the patient back. And what happens is, and this is just human dynamics. If I'm sitting in the ER and there's two doctors and the other doctor drags their feet, doesn't go see a patient, and I go see 2 or 3, I start going, if I keep doing that, I'm doing all the work, we're getting paid the same. So I'm not going to pick up the chart until he sees the next patient. And then all of a sudden, your whole your office workflow derails because that great employee is waiting for the poor employee to bring the patient back for her to go bring the next patient back. So now they're waiting for 30, 40 minutes in the waiting room. And it's because you got one person that's just putting a wrench in the wheels of the organization every minute of the day.
The way I describe it, A players want to work with A players only.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tolerate B players, but they will leave their job faster than your head will spin if you make them work with C players. Mm-hmm. And what you just described is magnetically repellent to top talent. So if you want to get more top people on your team, what I usually hear is that we're going to focus on getting the great people. Time out. Job number 1, remove the C, the D, the E, and the F players from your team. Replace them immediately. That alone, as a first step, will ensure that your A players aren't going to jump ship as much as you possibly can, and it will start to level up your talent within your practice. That's the way to move on this. Do most practices do that? No. But when Build My Team is brought in, that's exactly what we counsel. And the fact is that most practices don't remove that low-level talent or the poor performers because they aren't certain they can get better performers on their team. What Build My Team does is brings you a process, a fully systemized, predictable, reliable process so that you can have talent certainty. You get these people on your team, the great performers, and the other ones go.
Yeah, that's key. I think that's key. Like the retina surgeon said to you, I need a heartbeat. I just need somebody to put the patient in the room so I can see them.
Right.
But I wonder, when you work with a headhunter organization or something, aren't these the questions that they're supposed to filter out the candidates with?
No,
I thought they're supposed to.
the headhunters are the real estate agent. What kind of house do you want me to show you? Oh, I want $1 million home. What neighborhood? This one. Okay, let me show you a listing. Which one do you want to see? Let's go take you and see the house. Do you like the house? Okay, let's put a bid on it.
That's a great way to describe it.
Right.
And
it's not wrong or right. It's just that's their job, right? That's their job. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, our approach is we're only as good as our last hire. So imagine if you were buying a house 3 to 5 times a year. You'd want that real estate agent to know exactly what you're looking for, to be able to read your thoughts, be able to move very quickly to find you the place that you need to move into, et cetera, et cetera. But you're spot on that, Herb.
Yeah.
So that's what the real estate brokers are supposed to do. See what you want, where you want it, how much you want to spend, what you like, what you don't like. It's supposed to be a personalized thing, not just find a resume, here's a resume.
But they're compensated only when you purchase.
But they're compensated pretty well. So I would expect them to do a little bit of legwork, a conversation.
I don't think so.
Oh, wow, that's pretty bad. So what are they getting paid for? What are they doing? Just stockpiling resumes and dealing them out to people?
Yeah, they're lead generators. That's what the industry calls them. They're lead generators. So part of that $20,000 that you're paying to recruit a pediatrician, $30,000 to recruit a radiologist is because they're constantly advertising. They're constantly reaching out to databases. They're buying databases of doctors that are unhappy in their job, doctors that are finishing residency, and they're trying to get them on the phone to see what state they want a job in, what city they want a job in. And then that lead is what they're giving you. But you have to close, meaning you have to decide whether or not you want to hire that person and that's a good fit for your organization. And when you do, you pay them for all the advertising, all the process of generating the lead. They're lead generators, and that's their job, generate leads for practices to hire.
Yeah.
That's a very different job than aligning your vision, mission, values, and your culture to the person that you're hiring. And that's what Dr. Neal's doing. He's aligning people so that from the get-go, you share enough that it is a successful relationship. And that's totally different.
Yeah, I guess it's like online dating.
Everything is like dating because everything is like a relationship.
Yeah.
Relationship. Yeah.
So marriage is a relationship. Dating is a different kind of relationship. But it's very simple, the same thing. At my age, I'm not interested to go going clubbing every Saturday night till 4 a.m. in DC. I'm not interested in that. If I meet a person that wants to date me and her passion is to be on the nightclub and dancing till 4 a.m. every Saturday night, that's just not going to fit.
Yeah.
It's not going to fit. And so you have to find the people that are going to fit. And some people don't want a long-term relationship with a practice. They want to work for 2 years here, 2 years there, move around. That's not going to work at RBK because you guys have been in the same location for over 65 years.
Yeah. We used to be able to interview people and get the idea that they want to come, get a house, build roots, develop, grow children in the community, stay there. But it doesn't seem to be that way anymore these days. Now, what are your thoughts on physicians that worked in a place for a long time, 20 plus years, that decide that I want to leave, but now they're landlocked because they have a house So they really can't go too far without a terrible commute. Their commute is 5 minutes, and then they start to drive an hour. That's a long time. Why would they do that?
Must have been unhappy at some point with the position.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we always start with the question, why are you leaving?
Yeah.
All right, so let's finish up this conversation with what advice would you give to others for hiring beyond the resume? Let's leave it with that. Your thoughts on that, final thoughts.
I'm trying to sum up our entire podcast discussion in a couple sentences. I think that focusing, like measuring and focusing on a candidate's strengths, I really don't know of a more successful way to hire folks, especially in healthcare, because we look for such incredibly similar candidates over and over again. One of the key points of our discussion today is the detail orientedness, the following process. And if they're unable to do just those two basic things, they will not last in the practice more than a couple of weeks. They may be there for longer, but they should have been removed from the practice earlier than that. So I'd say that's number one. And the second thing is, that may sound overwhelming, but there are companies like Build My Team and folks who can help you produce the results that you're looking for, because we figured out how to systematize the process. So that would be my final thoughts on that.
Definitely the systematic process.
Yes.
And the introspection, which you're doing for your clients. Who am I? What do I really want?
Mm-hmm.
Because until you answer that question, you can't have a successful relationship with anyone else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was
Very
wonderful
insightful.
chatting, and until next time.
All right. You guys are great. Thank you so much.
So are you. A pleasure to meet you.
Same.
All right. Take care.